Welcome to Bigger Than the Game with Deremy and Jose. I'm Deremy Dove, and I'm joined by my tag team partner, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jose Ruiz. What's going on, man?
Deremy Dove, what's up, my brother? How you doing, man? What's going on?
I'm not much, man. I'm doing good. Doing good. It's crazy. It's been fun to look back at Bo Jackson. Lots of good stuff going on though in the world of sports documentaries. The Wilt Chamberlain Goliath doc.
Yeah,
Speaking of another unicorn type of athlete, I'm almost done the third and final episode, but that was my Sunday night. Was
yeah,
just watching that Wilt Goliath, and it's interesting because the Bill Russell doc came out earlier this year,
yeah.
and so like kind of comparing, they're always still rivals, even they're both passed away, but comparing the documentaries, but this Wilt doc, I'm glad it came out. It's been really good and interesting to kind of re-examine Wilt as a player, but also as a human being. So it's just interesting.
Yeah, I'm not done it yet. I'm like halfway through episode one. I started last night, and so I'll be done probably this week for sure. It's a different angle. It's an interesting angle. Um, I enjoyed so far what I've seen. We'll probably kind of do a recap on that. I'm down, definitely down for that. But yeah, the subject obviously Will Chamberlain. It's always a good topic for me to listen to, and it's just something I haven't like talked about or listened to in a little while. So it was refreshing to kind of like dive into them diving into that too. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the rest of it. I was happy with what I was watching. I think it was last night or something like that. Yeah, so it's cool. I like it.
No, it's just interesting to see just what it is, and like something that I'll only speak for me. I'll never know that feeling, but I think Bo had it, Will had it, a few other people in sports history have had it, where it just comes natural to you. Like
Yeah,
you just walk out there and you just dominate, and it's an interesting thing to see, because I think in the last episode you brought up, it is rare, and it's a special thing when you get the most talented combined with the hardest worker.
yeah,
Like it doesn't always work that way, and I think there's, for me, as the psych major, there's a lot to look into that, and to be like, in the why, when you get like an MJ, a Kobe, someone who is talented but also with that hard work, like what kind of fuels that drive for them. And I think that's the connected, a big part of what Bo's story is, which is a lot of it is fate. Like we can't control a hip injury, in the playoff game, kind of stopping all this, and not ruining, but yeah, ruining what could have been.
yeah.
But it's also just looking at it, what would be different if Bo had both? If he had the great athlete, but also he had that drive where he wanted to be great and he wanted to be the best.
Yeah, and I think it would have been very, very unfair to sports, though, honestly. So, but yeah, like you kind of talked about. I know we kind of like jumped in a little bit on the the Wilt documentary, and but yeah, we're here, right? We're here. Last week, we started our quick little two-part series on Bo Jackson. We dove into the Bo Jackson, the baseball career, right? We dove into that royal stuff, all of that stuff. Man, it was a great episode. If you haven't listened to it, please check the archives for sure.
Check him.
So today, what we're diving into today, and again, like I know me and you talked about Deremy about this like off the air and stuff. Like I think part two is where we're looking at like Bo Jackson, the football player, and then just overall the athlete overall, right? And where we see Bo as all time great athletically, right, compared to like a bunch of other guys, right, a handful of guys. But I think this is where a lot of people really recognize and remember Bo Jackson. Deremy is like, with that silver and black 34 on his chest, on his back, you know what I mean, and like that Raiders, those highlights, those running plays, the Bosworth stuff. Like we'll get into all of that, but I think this is where a lot of people just have that fond memory of Bo Jackson.
Do you think that's right? Do you think? I mean, anyone can have their memories, and like we're not saying there's a right or a wrong, but do you think it should be twisted? I mean, I know last week's episode we both kind of said when we think of the first highlights that we go in our memory, clean slate, baseball or football. The first ones for us is baseball. But like you said, and I do agree with you, I think a lot of people would think football first. And I think part of that is he won an Heisman and all that
Right.
stuff too. But do you think it should be people think baseball first, or do you think it's football? Like, are we the different ones? Are we the weird
I
ones?
think we are weird. I think we are the weird ones. I do. I really do. I think a lot of people, and look, that's fine. I think it's fine. I think football is a more popular sport, right? So for a lot of people, I'm not saying for us. I don't mean for maybe our listeners. I know a handful of probably listeners are football is probably their number one sport, but I just think football is king, and I think a lot of people, especially maybe like kids that are like our age were maybe not into baseball. Maybe they're more into football. Maybe the dads were, moms were, more into football and they were watching that. And like, those highlights kind of like stick out a lot more. And, we'll get into other reasons why we feel like, he was very popular when it came to football. But I think honestly, I just think when people think of Bo Jackson, the first stuff they think about is the NFL.
Well, it's funny because he always said, and now his love was track. That's
Right.
what he loved of any sport. Honestly, you could say it was fishing, hunting,
Right.
using his
Bow and arrows.
bow and arrows. That's like his first love. But if a sport, it was track and field. But he always said baseball was the sport he's playing, and football is a hobby. That's a direct quote from Bo. Um, it's funny because he said football was his hobby, but yet people think of football first. But Jose, is it? I guess I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I want to ask you: is football the better of the two sports for Bo? Was he a better football player than baseball player?
Yes, I definitely agree with that. I know we touched on it. I definitely said this during the last episode that like, I mean, and it's not just my opinion. I know you kind of like agreed with it in our last episode. I know it's not just your opinion. Like, baseball is probably the hardest sport to play. To hit a baseball is very, very, very difficult. I think if you give a guy the ball and he's big and fast, you can have a lot of success in football. And again, like I'm not saying just a big fast guy is going to play in the NFL and do well, but I think football for him was the better sport. I feel like. What do you think, Deremy?
I think football was better, and I think that's the one people kind of say if he wasn't hurt, he would have been a Hall of Famer in both. I don't believe, as we said last week, he would have been a Hall of Famer in baseball. I do believe he would have been a Hall of Fame running back.
Yeah,
Now, where he would have finished or where he would have ranked, I kind of debate that with what some people say. But I think he would have been a Hall of Famer just because he had that ability to break them. So sometimes, and
yeah,
that's the funny part with running backs and wide receivers is they could have a stretch where it's like, man, they're not really getting big numbers. But then when they have that breakaway ability or that deep threat ability as a receiver or breakaway as a running back, they could just rip off Bo would do a 90-yard touchdown or
yeah.
Randy Moss could get like a big 80-yard grab and then he could have a hot streak for a few games. And it was like, man, he got 1,500 yards receiving or 1,500 yards
Yeah.
rushing. But you looked at it, it was like that 4 or 5 game stretch was like the main stretch of it. But they went off in those 4 or 5 games. So I think based on that, I think Bo, to me, would have been a runner if he would have played more. He would have been, you could see him playing as a good defense, and it'd be like 20 carries on 60 yards or, 18 carries on, 54 yards. Then the next week, 18 carries, 202 yards and it's
Yeah.
just he would have been that kind of player with that kind of ability. So that's where I see. That's why I think Bo would have gone to the Hall of Fame if he would have stayed healthy.
Yeah, I agree. I think he was a great running back. You know what I mean? Like he was a good baseball player. I think he was a great running back. And I again like when you look at a running back, like what do you want? You want size, right? You want to be the ability to run between the tackles. He had that. You want the ability for him to bounce it outside. He could definitely do that. And you want some breakaway speed, and he had all of that. You know what I'm saying? And again, like you don't that's a combination, especially in this era, you didn't see very often. We might have seen it later on, maybe with like an Adrian Peterson and maybe Marshawn Lynch, like kind of like they were in that, but they were nowhere near as fast as Bo Jackson, and they weren't as big, So that combination there, that's all time great stuff. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like there's a rare breed that you can see that, because even in this era, and I want to definitely get into some names here, like of like this late '80s, early '90s running back, like like running back group, and kind of compare him to those guys. And but you like names you throw out there with that size is like a Christian Okoye, but that's in between the tackles. That's 5 or 6 yards a clip, possibly. Like he's barely breaking any of those long runs. He had that ability, but nowhere near like Bo Jackson. And it's like that. It's like he had that combination of like that Christian Okoye, like size and strength and ability to go in between the tackles, but he can bounce one out like a, I don't even know. I'm trying to think of a guy who was a speedy running back at this time, but just somebody with that ability, man. Like again, that's rare. That's a rare combination for sure.
But I mean, and you're right. And you look at it, one thing that was unfair, and Bo, not to the level comparing him and looking at like, the Wilt doc, there's two things that stood out to me watching that was number one, just how a bad rap in the media can just last and last and
Yes.
last. Um, One thing about Bo Jackson is that even from Auburn days, and that could carry over, people thought, he would get hurt, he wouldn't fight through pain or anything like that, and that was a big misnomer. And that's one thing I will say in Jeff Pearlman's book, The Last Folk Hero. He does a good job of saying it and interviewing like teammates who were like, Bo went through injuries. Bo suffered, had from bruised thighs to this to that, and sprained ankles. And Bo wouldn't complain. He would try to keep fighting for it. And sometimes when he was hurt, he would sit down. But I believe, hey, if you're not in that person's body, especially an athlete, someone put him
Absolutely.
out on the line, who the hell are any of us to talk? So a lot of people kind of would say, no, that was a bad rap that Bo got from Auburn, and it kind of did stick with him into the pros, whether baseball or football, and that was really unfair. And I think that's something that you see. And I think people try to, when you're that great of an athlete or that much of a unicorn, people are going to try to find holes wherever they can, Jose, to kind of poke at you because they don't want to see this happen, or they want to find that be able to find that weakness in your game.
Right, and then they go to like the injury thing, or maybe in basketball, like with the clutch gene, like they go to those things, those things you can't measure. You know what I'm saying? Like the heart and stuff, like this guy's heart, like you can't measure none of that stuff. Like, so it's an easy conversation to kind of like, or something is like an easy, it's an easy thing to throw out, right, in the media. And it's like, you can argue it, but you don't have to show proof of it because you really can't. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I think that again, like I agree. I just think that's that's people looking at what he's doing and how easily he's doing it, and just saying like it just bothers them. Like, you know what I'm saying? So let me figure something out that's going to kind of like shake this up a little bit, because everybody loves this guy, and they you shouldn't love him because of this. Like, and
Right.
that's terrible.
So, one thing about it is people know Bo, like you said, for the Raiders, the silver and black. They were the LA Raiders at the time.
Yeah.
But it's kind of funky because in both sports, and it goes to a bigger thing about Bo Jackson that I'll say later, but both sports, he could have had completely different futures. Where you look at, we talk about baseball, how George Steinbrenner and the Yankees wanted him right out of high school. Um, and in football, Bo wins the Heisman and all that stuff, but he's the first pick
Yeah.
of the '86 draft by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and there's a lot of controversy what happened on this funky flight that Hugh Culverhouse set up for Bo to fly from Alabama to Tampa to do a physical, and it wound up costing him his final year of eligibility for baseball,
For base.
Jose.
Yeah, and it was kind of sad how he kind of like find out, right? He was on the field, and the coach went up to him, was like, "Look, this and this happened because of that flight. Like, you're deemed ineligible." You know what I'm saying? And the crazy part is, like, from a guy who doesn't show a whole lot of emotion, I felt like, on the field and things like that. I mean, yeah, he was breaking bats over his head and stuff like that, but you know, he, in his own words, he said he was on the field, man, he was just crying like a baby. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's, again, like we talk about, the hobby was football, but he loved baseball, and like for them to take that away, and not for like Tampa to take that away, but for the NCAA and to kind of like deem him as ineligible was had to be tough. You know what I'm saying? Especially coming into your final season, you're looking forward to that. You're playing really well. You know, you're a hot prospect already. You know what I'm saying? Like, and coming in, you're ready to kill it for your senior season, and that's not happening. So, you know, in Bo Jackson's words, like he hated Tampa. You know what I mean? He felt like the Tampa Bay Bucks and that organization did that on purpose, so that way he would not go to baseball and just focus more on
Right.
football. And they knew they had that top pick, and they wanted to pick Bo Jackson, and they did. And he told them flat out, "If you pick me, I'm not going to play for you." And what they do, they take him with that number one pick.
Right, and yeah, he feel because Bo had a person who's kind of acting as an agent, which that was also illegal
Right,
at the time too.
right, right.
But a lot of things. So, and I kind of do think Bo. I agree with him that Tampa Bay did that
Yeah,
to get him to
they were a
play
shitty
football.
organization at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, with all to all due respect to Tampa Bay fans, Tampa Bay's much better organization today than it was at this point in time. We'll get into that in a little bit, but yeah, I can see them doing something like
I
this.
think even Tampa fans would agree that Hugh Culverhouse was a shitty owner.
Yeah.
So I don't think we'll get much debate about Hugh was great. Like I think they would agree that Hugh was not a good owner at all. And the funny story from that is after they take him number one and all that stuff, they're trying. They still want to. And he said, "There's no way I'm playing for you. I never will." But someone said they tried to fly him out for a dinner, get to meet some of the guys. And at the time, Tampa has this young quarterback named Steve Young. So Hugh set up a dinner. He asked Steve to come to the dinner and can talk to Bo about the Buccaneers and all that stuff. So they're at this Tampa steakhouse. They sit down, and Hugh's like, "I'm going to leave you two to talk." Hugh gets up, walks away, and Bo leans over to Steve. He said, "Hey, man, no offense to you. Yeah, I'm just here because someone asked me to, but there's no effing way I'm playing for this team. Just want to let you know." And Steve Young said, "Okay, my job here is done." that was it. But my question to you is, say, and I give Bo credit. He was a proud dude, and he knew his worth, and he was prideful, and I respect him tremendously for it. But let's play the hey, you're gonna number one pick. In the '80s, you're gonna get big money to sign.
Yeah.
Let's say he plays for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What do you think that would have been like for his legacy?
It would have been tough. It would have been tough, man. Tampa was a terrible team. You know what I'm saying? Like, even at '86, they go 2-14. Like, and even Steve Young's not even starting the season. Steve DeBerg is the starter, and then Steve Young, DeBerg goes 0-2, I think, something like that, and it was just horrible losses. And Steve, they give the reins to Steve Young, and he plays. I believe he plays the rest of the season. And that was it. It was Steve Young, and that's it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I was double checking the roster, and I was like, man, like, there's not too many household names, if any, other than Steve Young and Steve DeBerg. But I don't know, man. Like, I know a running back, it's not like the quarterback, a wide receiver. Like, I think a running back can make an immediate impact in the NFL. But man, that Tampa team was really bad, and I think honestly he would have just gotten beaten up and beaten up. He would have had some big plays. He would have had some big runs, obviously. He would have had highlights, things like that. Because again, like that position, you're going to get a lot of carries in '86, like that. Again, the running back is what the quarterback is today. You know what I mean? Like, I can remember growing up, and it was like the position. Like, if you had a great running back, you were going to be all right. Like, ask the Bears. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and but with that team, man, I don't know, man. There's no bow nose, nothing. Like, I don't think so. In my opinion, what do you think, Deremy?
No, I think it's because they would have given him way too many carries.
Right, they would have beat him up, man.
Like, he would have gotten, and I think Bo would have been disinterested big time.
Yeah.
And not feel. I mean, I think he could have broken away and had a few big runs. Yeah, like I think just by like, hey, for so many attempts, and they're on the pro level, and Bo's ability, but he's also not on the big stage,
right?
Which is huge, and people kind of forget it. But not just with being in Los Angeles, but having primetime games and everything like that. Which we'll get into it, but that primetime game really made his football career
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. So he wouldn't have that opportunity. No one's putting on Tampa Bay in the '80s. Like they're way bottom CBS's lineup back then. Like
Yeah, they're like the
you know,
third game.
yeah,
You
they're
know,
like
that third
the
1 o'clock game.
it's like the D broadcast team gets that, like,
Yeah.
oh, we got a Tampa game, so it's like where you stand. It's like you got a long way to go
It's like a young
to
Terry Bradshaw and like
yeah,
somebody else.
young Terry and young Vern, they were
Yeah.
getting them games. They were just over there getting those. It's like,
Yeah.
all right, well, we got Bo maybe. So
Yeah.
it's like I just think it would have been really hard for him, and yeah, we don't have the Bo nose.
Nothing. You know what I mean? Like Bo knows icicle, like whatever. Like he knows nothing. The creamsicle jerseys, that's it. Like, and it would have been rough, man. Like, and we've seen, no matter how great a running back can be. Like I know earlier I was saying, like you have a good running back, you have a shot, especially offensively. But again, like if your offensive line is terrible, man, you see running backs come in this league and and get beat up early on and just kind of get, like a little like shell shocked, you know what I'm saying? Like, and maybe them guys not hitting the hole as hard as they were in college. And because again, they know there's barely any holes there, so they're going to get beat up. And you think about the division he was going to, it was like, you had the Bears. I mean, the Bucks were in the Central, so you had the Bears, you had Minnesota, the two really good defenses. Then you had Green Bay was terrible at the time, and Detroit was terrible at the time, and then it was the Bucks, so he's playing in the NFC, where the Giants are there and, Washington is there and the 49ers are there. So he's playing a lot of great defenses as well. And it would have just been, I think, ugly. I think it would have been really ugly for him.
You know what I believe also, though, is, I had the scouting report last week for Bo, the baseball player. So I also dug up the scouting report for Bo, the football player.
There you go.
And
Deremy dubbed the scout. Let's do it.
Scout, just because no one's talked about a player like that. Like it's very hard in any sport to find scouting reports about a prospect. People talk about Wemby in the NBA, and is he the greatest prospect since Kareem or since Sampson or since this guy since Shaq? And it's like Bo Jackson was like that, but I believe this whole thing. Now I think it hurt him to miss his final year of baseball. Like that was legit.
Yeah.
But this is just what he needed because he was not going to Tampa Bay no matter what. If Tampa Bay doesn't do this, he still would have said no. And the reason why is because in the scouting report, when they're talking to Bo, these different scouts, the one guy from the 49ers said it, quoted Bo. Bo was like, I don't want to be O.J. Simpson where I want a bad team getting punished years and years and getting hurt. So Bo wanted to go to a good team. So I think no matter what happened, Bo was not going to play for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and that's a good comparison, and at least Buffalo, those 70s Bills had a decent offensive line. So
yeah,
OJ was putting up numbers, you know what I mean? Like in
the electric company.
Yeah. So he didn't have that. You know what I'm saying? No. Like he didn't have any company down in Tampa, so no, I definitely can see that. You know what I'm saying? Like, and again, like you see a lot of these Heisman winning running backs come in the leagues and going to these terrible teams. They're going to be high picks, especially at this era. Like you win a Heisman as a running back, you're going to be top 5, top 10 pick, and it just doesn't pan out. And it's not because the guy loses skill, you know what I mean? Like it's just the team around him is terrible. He gets into instead of hitting a hole, he's bouncing too many things outside, and you get into those habits as a running back, and you're going to suffer.
Which there, I think, Bo's lack of training, Bo's lack of studying would have hurt him.
Right.
Which is, I think, when you have that situation, you can have natural talent, but people think running back is just hand off and go. There's a lot more to it than that. You have to, be impatient, waiting for the blocks to set up. Being able to block on the backfield, being able to read, which way to go, read a defense, and all right, you're going to cut back. So Bo wasn't doing a lot of that either. And I think where he went to the Raiders, he could get away with that a little bit more. But on the Buccaneers, you have to be able to, all right, let me adapt to what I have here. And would Bo have done that? I don't believe he would have.
Right, with a young quarterback trying to like figure his own way out. So what are these defenses are going to do? They're just going to load up the box, right? They're going to put 8 guys up there, force Steve Young to throw the ball. And at that time, I think Steve Young finished for like 8 touchdowns and like 13 picks that season. Like, he was getting beat up a lot. He was running around a lot too. So, and it's not like Bo was going out of the backfield and catching passes. You know what I mean? Like at that time, he's not doing that. So, you're loading up the box, young quarterback, bad offensive line. It's just disaster for a running back, especially a young one.
Absolutely, it would have been. Now, what happens is he plans on playing baseball, but it's kind of a mixed bag, mixed story. You hear, did he reach out to Al Davis, like through someone saying, "Hey, if Al Davis is interested, let him know I'm down to play football," or Al just said, "Hey, I want to take a chance on him." But Bo winds up going to the LA Raiders in the supplemental draft, the next year.
Yep.
And at the time, the LA Raiders, they have this running back who was a Heisman Trophy winner, a Super Bowl MVP, wound up being a future Hall of Famer in Marcus Allen. So I'm want to know what you think, Jose, because I'm conflicted on this. Because Al Davis, throughout his whole time with the Raiders, always loved the big
Yeah.
unicorn, freakish athlete. He did that track
The
record.
the home run play. Yeah.
Right. That was before Bo, and that was after Bo. But he had this great running back in Marcus Allen there, and it's infamous, notorious in football history, the beef that Al Davis had with Marcus Allen. I believe until the day Al Davis died, he held
Yeah.
that against Marcus Allen. So I wonder if they had a better relationship. Say Al loved Marcus. I mean, because it's what's odd is that I think from the outside he should have, because he was an LA guy, won you a Super Bowl MVP, and was this dynamic running back, and was a tough as nails running back too,
And
but
loved by his teammates. Absolutely
and loved
loved.
by his teammates, loved by his teammates. But what do you think? Do you think Al Davis still does this if he has a good to great relationship with Marcus Allen?
I don't think so. Like I don't feel the need that he would have to do that. You know what I'm saying? Like now, again, you mentioned like the big play, home run play. Al Davis is all about that. The speed and down the field. Like he wanted that. Like the play action bomb to the fast wide receiver. He always tried to have all that. But if you have a guy who at this time was in his prime, and then Bo comes in and Marcus Allen finally leaves, goes to Kansas City and plays well in Kansas City and kills the Raiders in Kansas City. So there's no need for a running back. You know what I'm saying? Like you have an all-time great running back, and at the time he was already like on that trajectory, on that trajectory of being like a Hall of Famer, stuff like that. Finished, all-time leader, I think, in rushing touchdowns or touchdowns in general, while missing these like 3 seasons. Let's just say, you know what I'm saying? Like this will be a future episode, Marcus Allen for sure. I know we were talking about that before, but it's a travesty what happened to Marcus Allen in LA at the end there. So I don't think to make that. I know it was a long answer. I don't think he does. Even though he's a big name, he wants the big name. He wants that all of that Al Davis on his team. But there's no need to do that because I mean, if you can have 2 dynamic running backs like that, like I guess but I don't think so.
That's interesting. I So do you feel like part of it was in Al Davis's mind, I'm going to screw Marcus by bringing in Bo?
I think a part of it, yeah. Let me bring this young guy in here. He's going to take his spot, and then when I don't play this guy, this is the reason why. You know what I'm saying? Like I got this dynamic superstar. There's no matter of fact, I'm going to put this all-time great running back. I'm going to play him at fullback. Like you know what I'm saying? Like and embarrass him a little more. And look, Marcus Allen played fullback in high school. I believe he played a little bit of fullback in SC before becoming that great running back that he was. But you know, I don't know. Al Davis he's a great owner, a great coach, right? And he did what he did with the Raiders. He was a little grimy as well, but
Yeah, and this
Not to
this
talk
might
about
be
him, not to talk about him as he's passed away, but he
no.
was.
I think a lot of people can say this might be the grimiest, the
This is
biggest
definitely a
like
black
black
eye.
yeah, the biggest black eye on Al Davis's career. I think
Yeah,
is this because no one really fully. I've heard different things. I've heard different rumors. I have people who are out there in LA at the time saying what they think, but you never really got what led to the beef. And according to Marcus Allen, he doesn't know.
right.
Part of me doesn't believe Marcus Allen. I think
Me
he does
neither.
know.
Yeah, me neither.
I think Marcus can be a little slippery himself on some things too.
Yeah, yeah.
Ask Eminem. But
Ooh, Deremy
but
dropping the gems.
yes, but I think Marcus Allen has an idea and definitely knows why. And it's just interesting. It's one of those things I wish someone would come out. That's one of the books or how about a documentary, just Al Davis and Marcus Allen and like what really happened.
Yeah, it's a if you don't know about that, like there's a football life of Marcus Allen one where a part of it they definitely take a dive into that, and it's an interesting story even to like when he was inducted in the Hall of Fame, he thanked Al Davis and they panned right to Al Davis and he was just like and then there's a story about his dad. His dad presented Marcus Allen. It's crazy. It's crazy. And
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine if that happens in today's world where you got Twitter and you got everybody like reporting on that stuff and it was nuts. You know what I'm saying? Like and again, the not to get too much into this, but he was beloved by his teammates, and then when he went to Kansas City, he killed the Raiders, and them guys were all hugging him after the game. It's a crazy story, man. But
Well, what I will continue with Marcus Allen when it comes to Bo Jackson is, and I'm sure Bo Jackson will say it, but it's a big credit to Marcus Allen that when
yes,
Bo got there and he said, "I'll play fullback," and he instead of what we saw with Kansas City in baseball, where a lot of those guys were like, "Who the hell is this kid?"
yep,
Marcus Allen said, "I'm here to win. I'll do whatever I can to help you," and stepped up and played fullback and never complained and did a great job doing it
yeah,
and really helped out Bo Jackson. And a lot of those Bo runs, you're seeing Marcus Allen being that lead blocker the way we see like Moose Johnson later on and everything. He's getting that first block, and Marcus Allen had the pretty face and like people think he's a pretty boy. He was a tough dude.
yeah.
And Marcus Allen would lead on that block and Bo would take off. So a big part of Bo Jackson's success, he had natural ability, but what would have happened if Marcus Allen said "screw you" or would have made it harder for him? I don't think people give Marcus even enough credit when it comes to that.
Right, and I think what happened with Bo Jackson, the difference of him going to Tampa and to the Raiders was the Raiders were like a veteran team as well. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like you got I believe Jay Schrader was the quarterback, you got Willie Gault out there in wide receiver, you got Marcus Allen, you got Howie
Todd
Long,
Christensen.
Todd Christensen, yup. Like you got a lot of veterans on that team that can handle this top notch like rookie. He was essentially a rookie, and kind of like just all right, let's get this in because they just wanted to win. You know what I'm saying? Like it wasn't about all this other stuff. While in Tampa, it's like, and they were a decent team, right? They were finishing 9-7, 10-6, 11-5 year in and year out at that time, and so they had talent, not like Tampa, right? Like they were veteran leaders. So even like we were talking about Steve Young being a young quarterback, you couldn't blow it up 8 against the Raiders, right? Because not not that Jay Schrader was Peyton Manning, but he was a decent quarterback, and he was going to put that ball up to Willie Gault, and that was going to be a problem. You couldn't play Willie Gault 1-on-1, not with that speed, and so you couldn't do that to Bo Jackson, right? So he had a little more room that gave him that ability to break some big plays and things like that. So I think it was a very beneficial, like you said, not only the Marcus Allen thing, but the Raiders being such a veteran team and a good team at that time.
No, because if you look at those years, it's 87, 88, 89. Marcus Allen got hurt, so he misses a lot, and then 90. And a lot of times, by the time we're getting there, Bo's playing. He's still playing baseball and coming over. The attempts and are going toward Bo,
You're right.
and Bo's getting more attempts and more yard. Like it's starting to phase him out. Now that injury in '89 with Marcus Allen kind of another thing that just helped Al Davis being like, well, Bo's the guy. Marcus got hurt, his knee, whatever. But it really kind of just showed like Why would you do this? And now I
Right.
wound up prolonging Marcus Allen's career,
Absolutely.
but I just kind of do wonder. And a big thing for me is I can feel like Al Davis still brings him in, but they're being used completely different. It's he's not going to just give it to Bo and Marcus be damned. You know, I think they're being used in a completely different skill set, and it's a lot more even numbers. And honestly, it helps the Raiders win more.
It would 100% do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, and if you can, have Bo Jackson first, second down, or they can split first, second down. You have Marcus Allen as your like third down back as well. That's a nasty tandem. That's an all time great like 1-2 punch. Maybe the greatest ever. 1-2 punch, and or one of the greatest, right? And if you can, and it's prolonging both their careers, right? And who knows if they're doing that, maybe Bo doesn't get hurt, right? Maybe the hip thing doesn't happen because maybe that's Marcus Allen with that carry taking it to another. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't know what's going to happen. And I agree if they split that, if they keep that tandem together and they kind of split those carries and just ride those two guys, man, that's going to be a tough team to beat, especially in LA.
I think about something. Probably was about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more. But when NFL Network did that original, the top 100 players of all time list, and they got to Marcus Allen. I think he was either in the 90s or the 80s. I forget. But Matt Millen was speaking on him.
Yeah.
And Matt Millen played with the Raiders for a long time, was teammates with Marcus for a long, and Bo. And he said something that'll be really the theme about like this episode and these two parts, which it was like pretty much he said Bo Jackson, great athlete, but wasn't the football player that
no.
Marcus Allen was. And that was I'll be honest, Jose, one of the first times hearing someone say that, because a lot of times he's a greater athlete. He's great, but then this guy's a better football player. And I don't know. I think that always just sticks out, which is like, yeah, Bo could run. Marcus couldn't run like Bo. Marcus couldn't run people over like Bo. But Marcus was a complete football player.
Right.
And could you say Bo Jackson was a complete football player? In my opinion, no.
No, you cannot. And I think also, look, those intangibles that we've been speaking on, you know what I'm saying? Like the leadership. And I'm not saying Bo was a good leader or couldn't become a good leader. Marcus Allen was a great leader in the locker room. Like guys played with him, played hard with him. Guys, like we talked about, they loved him because they knew what they were going to get. You know what I'm saying? Like you can give the ball to Marcus Allen on the 1 yard line and you're going to score. Like he's going to find a way to get in there. He's a great receiver, right out of the backfield. He can catch the ball really, really well. That was another like dynamic of his. We talked about him playing fullback. He can block back there. So if you're blitzing, Marcus Allen was only going to be able to read that, be in position and give a little bit of extra protection to the quarterback. He was in the film room. He was doing his thing, man. Like, and guys really respect that, even if you're not the greatest athlete on the team. And dudes are going to respect your athleticism. Again, like Matt Millen was saying, like he was a great athlete, but when you have the guy, and again, we were talking about that in our last episode, like, having the heart, but not the talent, or having the talent with like without that, like not the heart, but like just that willingness to do whatever it takes. Guys like Marcus Allen had skills, but then that willingness to do whatever it takes put him like on a different level, where other guys like Bo had that athleticism and that willingness kind of like knocked him down a little bit.
No, absolutely. And you got to look at 1987. I think Bo's welcome to the NFL moment. Monday Night Football.
Yeah.
LA Raiders at Seattle, November, AFC West. That's when Seattle was in the AFC at the time.
Yeah.
And there's two rookies, and they're two colorful, big-name people in college football. You have Bo Jackson with the LA Raiders. You have Brian Bosworth, the Boz, with the Seattle Seahawks. And Bob's done a lot of talking before the game about how he's going to shut Bo down. And to the credit, Bosworth as a college linebacker,
he was the shit. He was good.
Yeah,
he was
not
good.
just even like we all know the promotional, the outrage, the hair and all that. He was a great college linebacker.
Yeah.
So to be fair, now I think people can laugh at it, like, what is he thinking? But at the time, back in '87, it was before this game. It was a big deal.
Yeah.
And I think people laugh at it, but I understand why it was a big deal, Jose, going into it.
Right. How many times do you remember, Deremy, growing up and you saw the Seattle Seahawks on Monday Night Football? It was not very often. I
No,
can
not
tell
at
you
all.
that. Like even like the David Craig, like Steve Largent, like when they were all on this team, like they barely were on there. So it was huge. You know what I'm saying? And it was huge for two reasons: Bo Jackson and Brian Bosworth. Like the America wanted to see that. Boz did a great job. I was always hyping it up, So they that was a big deal. And again, going back to what we talked about earlier, especially what you said there, I mean, like it wasn't going to be Tampa and Seattle, like you know what I'm saying, like
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't happening. Like it was the L.A. Raiders, a huge market. The Raiders are the shit at this time in the NFL. Everybody, it was almost like they were America's team, right? Like everybody loved the Raiders, and you had this guy in Seattle, right? Like this big time linebacker who, again, was a great player in Oklahoma, and it was about to go down. Like, the quote Kevin Hart, it was about to go down. You know what I'm saying? Like, for sure.
I think what we got in that game, one of the great performances of all time from Bo Jackson,
Yep.
one of the great plays of all time. I think it's still, if you see highlights, like people ranking greatest plays, that 91-yard touchdown run,
It's crazy.
Monday Night Football. I said last week it was really hard for the camera and like for me to like pick up like his speed. The one play I will give that I kind of got it was that 91-yard touchdown run where he's going so fast he can't put the brakes on going into. He got to go into the tunnel.
Yeah.
And hearing Dan Dierdorf say like he's going all the way to like Tacoma.
Yeah.
And all those things. Like it was just that night you couldn't ask for it. And we talked about in baseball how Bo, in our last episode, Bo hit the moments and knocked him out the park. This was only a few weeks. I think he came week 7 or week 8 in '87.
Yeah.
And this is week 12. So he's only been there a few weeks. Monday Night Football, Bosworth calls him out. And now I'll be honest, I think if Bosworth doesn't have the words, it's still a big deal because of who these guys were. But talk about answering the call. Bo Jackson answered the call that night.
Absolutely. And quick sidebar, I love Dan Dierdorf Monday Night Football. I gotta say that. I like Dan up there.
Yeah.
But that was a good comment. That was a good team up there that time.
It was.
So yeah, no, I agree. That the first when people think about Bo Jackson and like when you get those Bo Jackson highlights, probably the first two came from this game. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe 2 out of 3 at least, right? It's like the goal line run right against Brian Bosworth, where he doesn't really run him over, but he ran through him a little bit. Like
I would say, yeah, he runs through him more than runs him over.
Right, and even like Howie Long said it. I remember watching him say it, and I was like, yeah, that's kind of true. Like he didn't like run him over, but he ran through him a little bit. And but that 91-yard touchdown run, it was insane because again, it's a great camera angle, right? Like it was just the highlight. You see everything. You see the total package of Bo Jackson, right? Like because even when the angle they had it, you see his size. Like you know what I'm saying? Like when he turned that corner, like you can see how big he looks. And guys have the angle, and he was so fast that even you having the angle, you were not going to catch him, man. And then when he turned it on, he was gone, man. And you can see those little steps and him just going, man. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing, man. Like a guy that size running that fast, like you watching this game. I mean, obviously I wasn't watching this game. Deremy, I know you probably weren't watching this game, but I can imagine like fans watching this and just looking at this guy play and just like, this is going to be like the next 8 seasons of this incredible player in this league, man. Like, and again, we talk about Bo Knows and his popularity blowing through the roof. Monday Night Football, and again, this is a time where there wasn't Thursday Night Football. You're not getting Sunday Night Football. You're not getting all these other games. It's either Sunday on CBS or Monday Night Football. And this one, Monday Night Football, was huge. And for him to have this performance on there, it was on after this.
And honestly, you mentioned Christian Okoye earlier, and it kind of reminded me of the same thing when Steve Atwater hit Christian Okoye.
Right.
It was the end of Okoye. When Bo has this performance against Bosworth, it's really the end of the Bosworth talk.
Yeah, he can't hype himself up after this. Like
it
was done.
He was kind of like deflated after that.
Yeah.
And Bo kind of just he was on top of the football world. And don't get me wrong, as dirty, we talk about how dirty Al Davis was with Marcus Allen. When you see plays like that in a run, the games like that, you
It makes
can't
sense.
knock
Yeah.
it. I can
Yeah.
understand why being infatuated with this guy. Bo Jackson said after that Al Davis, if you were the player of the game, would have you ride on the bus back with him. So after that game, Al Davis had Bo sit next to him and ride on the bus, and that was a big deal. So Bo had 221 yards rushing that night, 2 touchdowns, throwing a receiving touchdown that Bo had. Bo did fumble. He had a fumble in this game too, but it doesn't matter.
No.
When you play like that, we will forgive fumbles when you can do what Bo did. And he's had multiple. That wasn't his only 90-yard run of his career, by the way. That wasn't the longest run of his career.
Was not.
No. That's just how dynamic the guy was.
Yeah, he had what 88-yard run and 91, 92.
Mm-hmm.
And guys don't get too many of those. You know what I mean? And again, this is what we're going back to the conversation we had about home run hitters, right? And you get that at the running back position. Now you get it a little more. But then, you got guys, even on the opposite, right, on the opposite field of that game, you got Kurt Warner or whatever. Like he was a good running back, but he wasn't doing with Bo Jack. He wasn't taking it to the house, right? Like you got again guys like Okoye, maybe like an Eric Dickerson at this time. Like he was doing that. He was taking it to the house. He had that ability, but there wasn't a whole lot of guys that had that ability to do that from like 90 plus, 80 plus, and things like that. And again, that's the crazy scariness of Bo Jackson, right? With that size and the ability to go in between the tackles, and he can get you to 3-4 yards and sustain drives and things like that. Or, you can be at the 15-yard line, you're on, and then he just breaks it, and he's going to put you over the top. And it's just, again, like that's that rare combination. We don't really see that too often, and we still haven't really seen that in that position at all.
Do you think it's crazy? Because a lot of people, Jim Brown passed away this year, but a lot of people have said, like, not a lot, maybe not a lot, but some, Bo, the only comparison is Bo with Jim Brown. Do you think Bo was the closest thing we've had to Jim Brown?
Yeah. No, that's I agree there. You know what I mean? Because again, like if you look at like these all time greats, right? Like let's just grab a handful. Like I'll guys like Thurman Thomas. I'll start with somebody
No,
like
of course.
that. And
Of course.
I was just waiting for that. But no,
Yeah.
in all seriousness, like Walter Payton, right? We got you got guys like Barry Sanders, right? Another home run hitter and things like that. Like you got all these great running backs, and they had that one thing that they were amazing at, right? Like Barry was like obviously the shifty guy, but wasn't the biggest guy, right? You got Emmett, had the great offensive line, right? Opening gaping holes for him, and he could walk through them holes and score touchdowns.
Of course.
But he had
Yep.
some ability there.
Yeah, a lot of ability.
Yeah, right. So I'm clowning. Emmett was good. I know Emmett was great. Walter Payton had that he didn't have that breakaway speed, but he can run through the tackles. He had a lot of heart. Man, he would get those tough yards, and he was able to catch the ball. Like all these guys had like their thing, right? But rarely, again, had that speed and size combination like Jim Brown. And I think Bo Jackson maybe. I don't know, man. Like people
Earl
talk,
Campbell.
that was the one I was going to go with. Earl Campbell. People talk about Adrian Peterson. Like who else? Like that combination. There's not a whole lot of.
No, I think that's where it is. It's pretty rare. I think he had that ability. Now, would he have been Jim Brown? It's a different story.
Right.
I'm not sure about that. That's mighty big words.
Yeah.
But I do, in my opinion, Jim Brown is the GOAT when it comes to running backs.
Yep. Easily.
So I think if you're going to say that Bo Jackson would have been the GOAT, I don't know. I really don't know about that.
Yeah, I couldn't go there. You know what I mean? Like, and I just don't think you're in my mind, and you're not going to surpass Jim Brown to me. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like even like a Walter Payton, like those are two names for me. Like it's going to be hard for anyone to surpass. Like I hold guys like a Barry Sanders very high, right? One of my favorite, like LT. And I'm not putting LT in this group, but he was really, really great. Marshall Faulk. Like these guys are like all-time greats, man. Like, and I can't even put them in this group, right? I, it's tough to crack that group for me. I don't know. That's just me.
Correct. So Brown 1 and Peyton 2.
I in my book, yeah.
No, I think it's tough to crack it.
Yeah.
And some people I could say I can understand them putting Walter at number 1.
Right.
You know,
I'm
I
not
can
gonna argue too
understand
much.
it. Yeah, I can understand it. I know maybe Jack, our buddy Jack Silverstein,
Yeah.
he might put
Jack's
Walter
freaking
at
out right now. Yeah.
he might put Walter at number 1, and I understand. Walter was one of maybe my favorite player. He's up there like in sports history. I love Walter Payton, but I would give it to Jim Brown number 1 and Walter right behind him. But why do you think Bo wouldn't have been? And now I guess I should throw out or ask you what scenario are we looking at? The scenario just like with baseball, is this if Bo just focuses on football, or are we looking at it as Bo doesn't get hurt in 91 against the Bengals?
No, I'm looking at it same dynamic, right? If he focuses strictly on football, like maybe doesn't go to 10. I don't know. It's hard to kind of like do this one, but because again, if he focuses on football, then he's going to Tampa. You know what I'm saying? Like, or maybe, you know what I'm saying, that he doesn't have the baseball to fall back on at this point, on this analogy, but let's just say it all works out and he's at the Raiders and he's just at that point in time he focuses from there. And I don't know, man. To me, it's just hard for me, man, like to put anyone else up there. Now, does he have the ability to be in that really rare category? Yes, he absolutely does. Again, he averaged like 5.5 yards, 5.4 yards per carry in his career. Like he had that ability, man, like to be up there. It's hard for me. I just ain't see a lot. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's hard for me to like look at it and go, yeah, he had these great games and, but it's hard, man. This one is hard for me, to be honest, like to put him in this class.
I just think what Jim Brown had was a desire to be great. And I think now Jim Brown was in that rare era too, and this is a connecting theme, and we'll get to great athletes where they knew their worth. And so Jim Brown retired early too. If Jim Brown plays 2 or 3 more seasons, right, that rushing record is never going to be caught.
Nope.
I mean, it took a long time for Walter to get there, and then we saw Barry and Emmett chasing it, and Emmett got it. And Barry, I think, would have gotten it if he played for sure. But if Jim Brown plays 2-3 more years, good God, like that's
which he could have easily did 3 years. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like if he goes 4 or 5, it's like, to me, it's almost. And again, I don't want to like throw basketball into this, but like a conversation I have with a lot of people with like Kareem, right? And it's just like Kareem played 4 seasons in UCLA. Like if he comes out of like a freshman and he's playing 3 more years, like if you tack on 3 more seasons to Kareem, like there's no breaking that scoring record. Like it's not going to happen. And I think the same way with this. Like I think if Jim Brown, like you said, like he could have easily played 3 more seasons at like the top best player in the game. 4 or 5, he could have still been the best player in the game. And that those numbers are ridiculous. And Cleveland is winning more championships, and it's just. He would have definitely. There's no argument at that point where it's just like he's obviously the greatest player ever, like let alone running back.
And I think what it has been for me is listening to the quotes. So listening to Jim Brown talking about. I remember for me, my dad and my great uncles always would talk about Jim Brown debating the greatest running backs, and it was about always before I even saw the clips, Jose. The stories about Jim Brown would run, get tackled, and he would get up so slow and walk so slow back to the huddle, and doing that mental mind game on the defense. And it was about, hey, I'm getting them fooled to thinking that they got me and that I can do that. And that was a mental thing that he would play on people. Jim Brown critiquing, not right or wrong, critiquing Franco Harris because it was like, no, you don't run out of bounds. Hey, you have a chance to crack back on that DB or that linebacker and impose your will. You do that. Now, right or wrong, I don't think you should have critiqued Franco Harris.
No.
But that shows he's thinking about the game on a different level,
right,
on a psychological level about how to, have them submit to my will. Bo Jackson, and there's a direct quote, you can hear it, where he was like, I didn't care about being great. I didn't care about records. I wanted to have fun. Which, like we said last week, I respect Bo for that. He has
Yeah.
that right, and that's cool. And hey, that's knowing your worth and knowing just how great you are, which Bo did. But the two different philosophies for me is why,
Right.
Bo would never have been Jim Brown. Not because of ability, because of the mental desire to be great.
Especially, this is not baseball. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and again, I know baseball, we talked about it. To me, it's the hardest sport to play. Physically, obviously, it's football. You know what I'm saying? Like, so if it's not 100%, like, I'm all in, this is the wrong sport for you, man. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because if you look at, again, Jim Brown, on the flip side, you look at Walter Payton, how mentally tough Walter was, having to play against, playing with those Bears, those bad Bears teams, and having to just constantly just run into that offensive line and gain all those tough yards. Like Emmitt Smith, I'll give Emmitt that, mentally tough. You know what I'm saying? Like all these greats. Again, we can look at Barry. Like Barry was. I'm not saying he wasn't mentally tough, but even him, like he didn't want to be the greatest, and he was amazing. But to me, he wasn't like all in either. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm not saying like I'm not knocking him, but football wasn't the most important thing to Barry Sanders. That's just my perception of just like all the interviews and some of the stuff that he's talked about. So like you need these top guys, like if you don't have that, like I'm gonna run through this wall, like type of like attitude, it's just gonna be tough for you to become like this all time great because ability will get you so far, and then like there's gotta be like there's like another stage I feel like where you're getting beat up all the time and your body's all banged up, but you still gotta go out there and get 32 carries for 118 and like a touchdown, like whatever, like that's different shit right there, Darren. I mean, like that's a different mental capacity that, and some of these guys don't have it, which is cool. Like I'm not, again, we're not knocking Bo Jackson. I'm definitely not knocking Bo Jackson, Barry Sanders, these guys. But again, to crack those top guys, you got to have it all, and they didn't have it all.
No, and I think that's where it would have hurt Bo. And I do believe now, if you look at what reports say at the time when Bo got hurt in that playoff game in early '91 against Cincinnati, he had said he was going to play one more year at that time. Now you've heard him talk in recent years. He has said, I was going to retire at the end of that year anyway. I just think that, Jim Brown played like 9 years
Yeah.
and then, had that showdown with Art Modell, and he's on the Dirty Dozen Classic film set and then just retires. I don't think Jim Brown does that at 4 or 5 years.
Right.
If that makes sense. Like, I think he still had more to prove. I think that, I think he would maybe demanded a trade or something, but I think at 9 years he had done it. Bo was looking never, and also Jim Brown's playing full seasons.
Right.
Bo is not playing full seasons either. I just see it very differently, and I Ron Wolf saying he would have been the first 3,000 yard back and all those things. I just think no matter how much of a unicorn you are, and we'll keep it just to sports, once you get to that pro level, even at the best athlete, you're playing against the best of the best on the field and also the best of the best coaches to scheme to stop you. So you have to have it because no matter what, we look at from Shaq to Wilt to all these different guys in different sports, as basketball, but they're scheming to stop you. And you have to keep evolving your game because you're still, maybe they're not as great an athlete as you. Maybe no one out there is great as as Bo Jackson, but you're still playing against great athletes. And if you're not training, which Bo didn't do, and hitting the weights, which Bo didn't do, and sitting in there and watching film, and I think if Bo just played football, he still wouldn't be going to training camp.
Yeah. Yeah, he's going to try to find his way out of that for sure.
Yeah. So hey, more power to you. No one likes training camp. I just can't see. I think just because of like that ability, and he could get those numbers. I think he could get into the Hall of Fame if he would have played longer. But I can't see him being on the in the GOAT conversation. I really can't.
Yeah, it's tough, man. Like it's especially in this sport, it's definitely tough. And then you can look at, what happens to that Raider team after this like 91, 92 season, right? 93. Like they just fall like off the earth. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I don't know. Again, we went back to like Kansas City Royals, same analogy. Like what happened to the Royals in that organization. Now, when you have a guy who's again like maybe not all in it, right? But now you're also losing. You know what I'm saying? Like so the winning kind of gives you that like extra like that extra push. It's like, all right, man, I can get into the playoffs. We can try to possibly win a championship. I'm going to come back next season. Like if you know going into the next season the Raiders are going to be 3-13, like where's that extra motivation? Stats? He's already stated like it's not about stats for him. You know what I'm saying? Like so it would have been hard, man. Like you know what I'm saying? Like especially it's for Bo Jackson to crack the he
You
like you
don't think
said.
he don't think
But
he would have been great with Todd Maranovich as his quarterback, and they wouldn't be lighting it up? You don't believe in that Jackson Maranovich backfield, Jose?
no, I don't. I don't. I don't. I don't. I remember watching him play, man, and I was like, "Who is this dude?" Like, you know what I'm saying? This red dude, left-handed quarterback, and then that's another crazy story. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think that's going to work out, and it goes downhill quick, and I just don't. Again, like you got to have a certain mental toughness to want to battle through all of that. And again, I'm not saying he's not tough, but that's just different, and I don't think he was going to want to be around for that.
No, and we can give him credit. He is the only guy in two of those major pro sports. He was an All Star in '89 in baseball, and in '90, Pro Bowl running back.
Yeah.
Played 10 games, 125 carries, 698 yards, 5.6 was the average. He ran for 4 touchdowns, and that was enough to get him there. To me, his best year, that was '89. He played 11 games, 173 attempts, and that's the year Marcus Allen was banged up and missed most of the season. But he got 950, playing 11 games, 950 on 173 attempts, 5.5 yards per carry. So to me, that's impressive. Where he's 50 yards away from getting 1,000 yards, which was a huge deal back then to get 1,000 yards as a rusher. And he probably would have got if he played one more game, he would have gotten it in 12 games really.
Right, and if you like, even if you add, because I was looking at his numbers, right, and if you do the math on that, if you average that out, right, that's obviously like 95 yards per game at that point. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm not. I don't have the schedule in front of me. Their schedule that season. I don't know if he had the bye already or whatever. Say they didn't have the bye. You add 5 more games to that. If you average that out, that's like another 455. If he plays a full season, he's running for like 1,400 yards. Like, so if you look at all those numbers, and if you kind of like do the math and the averages, like he's hitting 1,000 yards easily most of those seasons. If he plays a full schedule, right? But again, like we don't know. Like you know what I'm saying? Like it's so hard to like kind of like project what he would have done because that running back position, the more you play, the more carries you get, you're going to get hurt. Like, I don't care who you are. Like, the best of the best have gotten hurt, and it's just inevitable. Like, you're getting hit 30 plus times, like a game. You're going to get hurt. So, it's crazy because we lose them on this freak play. And again, that last folk hero, it's just like it even adds to that because we've really never seen him like just banged up. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, miss a game or like 3 games because of like a sore knee or something like that. You know what I mean? Like it's just we don't really get to see any of that because it was just like boom and then bust. Like so it's. But I was looking at his numbers and I was just like, man, like that season he would have ran for like 1,400 yards. Next season, that '90 season, he would have ran for like 1,300 yards. If that and at that pace and that average, if you add like another 5 more games, so and that's just
It
that average. You know what I'm saying? Who knows what happens in those games?
and that's honestly, if he, maybe it's different. I really do think Bo needed that. He needed to play both sports.
Right.
Like I don't. I think for attention span to challenge it, he was bored. So then football, that's why training camp physically, but mental, like a lot of it's mental. It's tedious.
Yeah.
Like we look at like the crazy hits on Sundays, but a lot of it is a tedious thing. And I just think
It's hot.
Bo,
You know,
yeah,
2 a days, and we're talking training camp in 86, 87, 88. There's 2 a days every day. Like there's no training camp like now.
right.
Where these guys get breaks and no, I mean they're getting breaks, but back then it was brutal. It was brutal training camps.
So I just think Bo wouldn't have liked it. And also that no matter what they try to look at, that like you said, they're more looking out for players, trying to save them for the year.
Right.
That's become in like the 2000s, this last decade, and especially with the labor strike in like 2011 and all that. Now it became like official. In the 80s, you were getting them carries. You were playing in at least some preseason games. So
Yeah.
Bo's getting those. The wear and tear is adding up on Bo. Which one thing about it too, Bo in Auburn didn't have the wear and tear. He wasn't a 4 year, got all the carries until really that senior year. He was in the backfield with Lionel J. He was splitting carries in the backfield. So that also kind of like saved some tread for Bo, which is huge because a lot of times I look at it now, like Derrick Henry, the carries he
Yeah.
got at Alabama, that takes a toll on him in Tennessee.
Yep.
Like that adds up, and I feel like if Bo would have been 4 years the only guy at Auburn, who knows, the injury doesn't happen even quicker.
Right. Right. And again, like he the way he came into the and then he misses one season. You know what I'm saying? He misses that 86 season. So it's like now he also gets a year off. You know what I'm saying? Like and then comes into the league like that. So it the way he came into the league, into the NFL, like as a running back, that was not the norm back then. Like you mentioned, like, these guys were coming in and, you know, you look at the all time greats, like you look at even like I don't know. Like I'm trying to think of guys at that time, but they're getting a bunch of carries in college too, right? Like they're the man in college. They're coming in and winning Heisman. If you win a Heisman Trophy, you were probably the man in that year, obviously. But it wasn't like you said, like it wasn't like a split thing. And he comes into the league and it's like a split thing again with Marcus Allen. Like he kind of came in and it was just like they were like just weaning him in. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like you're getting 170 carries this season, 150 the next season. Like, no, like these guys back then were 250, 300 plus every year. Like you can just look at those numbers, man. Like, you're looking at the Emmets and all of that, man. There were guys pushing 375 at some points. And obviously, if you don't believe that, then why do you think the league is the way it is with their running backs today? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like these guys, there is no single running back. I can name maybe 5 teams that's just one running back that's going to get the majority of the carries on their team. Like that just does not happen anymore. Why? Because it's been historically shown that these guys are not going to last. They're not going to last 2 or 3 seasons that way. You have to split those carries up. You rarely see a guy with 20 plus carries game in and out. Like it's just, and this is why, like, because of these guys, how they were used back then, and he wasn't even used that way. So that body was more fresh to weight compared to a lot of other guys in that time.
Well, let me give you. So Bo, I'm just going to give you his college, right? Because I said some of his pro in '82, 127 attempts as a freshman,
Right.
158 as a sophomore. Got banged up and as a junior a little bit, so he had 87 as a junior, and then 85 the senior years when he had 278. Right now, let me go to Herschel Walker, another phenom type guy, Heisman winner at Georgia in the earlier 80s. So 1980, 274 attempts, 1,616 yards. 1981, 385 attempts
That's insane.
for 1891. And then 82, 335 attempts. So Bo Jackson has 650 attempts in 4 seasons. Herschel had 994 in 3 seasons at college.
That's insane.
So,
Like that's the time before time they didn't give a shit about what was going to happen after you left. These
yep.
coaches wanted to win, and they needed to win to save their jobs. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then you get Herschel Walker. He comes into the league. He gets those carries continue, and then next thing you know, there's like a stale right there. You wonder why. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, why does he fall off the cliff after that trade to the to Minnesota? This is why. Like, these guys
Mm-hmm.
are getting banged the hell up, man. Banged the hell up. And he was another one. Size and speed. I forgot all about Herschel Walker, so great comparison there. I mean, I'm glad you brought those numbers up, but like another guy with size and that can bounce it and take it to the house for
Right.
sure. Like I remember Herschel came to the Eagles and he was still returning kicks and shit like that. Like he was a freak athlete as well.
Yeah.
But the comparison of how he came into the league and how Bo Jackson came is night and day, man. Like that body was almost done, and then it's been proven in the NFL when a guy hits 400 carries, that next season he's going to bottom out, man. Like it's proven, and it's a rare like a Derrick Henry maybe that hasn't happened yet, but that's coming too. I feel
Well,
like
he got banged up last year, Derrick Henry.
right,
So let's see how he bounces back. But I I look at it, that's insane that between college and pro, Bo Jackson had, because I think for a workhorse back, would you say 200 carries is at least, you got to have at least 200?
oh yeah, 220, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure, yeah,
220 to 250, but like at least over. Bo Jackson had 200 carries one time from college and pro.
right. That's an easy ride, man. Like I'm sorry,
That's,
man.
to be fair, yeah. Like, I'm not taking it away, and I do mean it. I said it earlier. I don't. You can't talk when people are putting their bodies on the line physically, unless you're in that same profession doing it. Nobody can talk, so I'm not talking for Bo Jackson or coming at him. But that is very rare for running backs, even in today, but especially back then, that you get to stay so fresh.
Right. And then if you look at it, 250 carries, 16 game schedule, obviously one by. You're looking at like 17 carries per game. Like, so you're not even hitting 20 at 250 carries, like on the average, and that's sheesh,
But
man.
that makes a difference because to me, the
Yeah.
Herschel was a freak athlete too. Herschel still is a freak. I mean, Herschel doing MMA at 50 years old and looking amazing and
Right.
dominating. I mean, Herschel Walker was, to me, there's not a big difference between Herschel and Bo Jackson.
Not to me either. No, for sure.
But I think you made the point how much that wear and tear those carry. I think both of them had the same. Both of them didn't focus on football. They
Yep.
had other interests and things, but that wear and tear. Because I don't even know what Herschel did. I could look that up, but his USFL carries before getting to the NFL, like
Right.
that wear and tear on the body. Bo did not have that, and yet still he did get hurt playing from baseball to football. I think Bo wouldn't have done well. Imagine him getting 300 carries in 87.
Yeah.
That's a big adjustment for Bo.
Yeah. He's putting up numbers. You know what I'm saying? Like, but with those numbers, there's for sure consequences when it comes to that,
Yeah.
and your body, it's hard to keep up at that position, and I get why you see backs today are struggling to get paid, and I totally understand why. Like, because there's going to come a season where one of these great running backs is just he's just going to fall off the map, and you don't want to take a chance in paying these guys 16 million per year like they doing like Christian McCaffrey, and he's just going to fall. And he's a different type of running back. He's not a Derrick Henry. He's not one of these big bruisers like these guys were, or he's not getting 20 carries. He may get 20 carries maybe twice that season. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe, but he might get like 15 to 20 touches, but he ain't getting no 20 carries for sure. And
No.
these guys, that was a custom. Like if you didn't get 20 carries, that was a bad game.
So I think it's a shame because, not to go too off topic, but I don't have any kids, and a lot of people, including Bo, I read an article where he said if he would have known about CTE and more about concussions back then, he would have never played football. He doesn't want his kids playing football. And I don't know. I mean, you're a dad, Jose. I'm not. So I don't know if I am a parent how I would feel about if I had a son wanting to play football. But I can tell you what, if he wanted to play, had a big desire, and it was like, all right, fine, okay. I think which is sad to say for me because it's such a great position, one of those fun ones you talk about. If there's one position I would say do not play, it'd be running back because I just think no matter how great of a talent he is, you're doing like your shelf life in my mind be like it's just a matter of time. It's like can you transition to receiver or something? Like it's just a matter
Yeah,
of time before he's done. So I think that's what is sad now, which is like I think growing up that was a pride outside of quarterback. You're a running back, that's great. But now I think that's the number one position I would recommend people not to play running back.
yeah. I don't know if we've had this conversation. I thought maybe we did, but my son played high school football, and I was totally against it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and listen, Deremy, and this is more in particular, more for our listeners. Like, I'm doing a sports podcast here. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I love sports. I love the sport of football. Like, I can watch a lot of football if you let me on a Sunday. And
Yeah.
as much as I love the sport, as I do know about it, you know what I'm saying? And I know like damages that can cause that. And he wasn't a running back. He played offensive line and defensive line, and he'll vouch for this. You want to ask Drew, he'll tell you I was not for it, man. And but he, he wanted to do it and he did it and he loves it. And I think he's playing his senior year, but I was against it, and because this is why, like, you know what I'm saying, like having this conversation, it's just like I've seen a lot of athletes even that play professional football are like, no, I don't want my son to play. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
these are guys who made a career playing, and their lives are great, and their children's lives are going to be great, and probably their children's lives. Like, and these guys don't want their kids to play. So I 100% understand it. It's a great game, but again, there's consequences to play this game.
It's a different mindset and it's a different thing. And to hear someone like Bo say it, I think that says it all. Which is he's like if he would have even had it, hell no. But definitely he didn't want his kids to play it. And hey, I'm not a dad. You are. I can't blame either any parent either way, whichever how they go. I just sit back and listen because it's a lot, and we're getting like you said, being sports fans, we're getting a lot of information, and especially for us being sport history fans, we keep up with guys, so we follow the past and then we see where they end up, what happens afterwards. So there's a lot of stories, a lot of sad stories out there. So I think the as a guy, I love that Bo you know what? Even because I think now it's popular to be like, whoa, 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 you got me running out here. No, 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 you got to ease
Yeah,
these carries up. Bo was doing that back in the 80s when it wasn't popular, and he got some heat for it. But I respect that he was like, yeah, you're not going to work me down like a dog and 300 carries, and then I'm shot for my future for either baseball or I want to play football. I love that he said no, Jose. I really do. But when it comes to the GOAT category, then there's no way you're being a Jim Brown if you're
yeah,
not going to take on all those carries. Like you're not going to do it.
yeah. That's a part of the GOAT conversation. You know what I'm saying? Like 100%. And if it's a good team, if it's a bad team, like Walter Payton had for all those years, right? Like it didn't matter. He was going to carry the ball. He was going to catch the ball out of the backfield. He was going to block. Like it did not matter. And those two guys are why they are where they are. You know what I'm saying? Like, and again, like they don't. Emmett got the rushing record, but I'm not. And Emmett mentally was there too. I'll give Emmett that. Like you look at that game where he separated his shoulder, still had like 20 plus 30 carries, and that was an insane game. I remember watching that game. I know we talked about that a few times here on this show. But you gotta, not to say you gotta like kill yourself out there, but you gotta have those carries. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Sadly, you kind of do.
right, and if you don't, and if you're shying away from it, and I'm not, obviously he wasn't scared or anything like that. He just knew like the damage or the toll it was going to take. Then you got to back out of that conversation when it comes to the GOAT.
Yeah. Now, what you could call Bo the GOAT in
Oh yeah,
is maybe the greatest video game
Yeah, hell yeah.
athlete of all time, Bo Jackson and Tecmo Bowl. And Jose, I want to know because Madden was already invented when Tecmo Bowl was kind of created. Like they both were like '80s games, early, late. Madden was like mid '80s, late '80s, and Tecmo Bowl came out late '80s. But what are your first memories of Tecmo Bowl and Bo Jackson and Tecmo Bowl?
Yeah, he was unstoppable, man. That shit was not cool. I hated when guys played with the Raiders, and because I didn't play with them. I can't even remember who I played with. I know Randall was like amazing in that game.
Christian
Um,
Okoye, I
just
think
yeah,
those Bo and Okoye were like the two best players. People
yeah,
forget how good Okoye was in that too.
yeah. He was hard. He grab him, he like wrestle you up, and then you gotta let him
Yeah,
go. And yeah, it was just it was like funny. You know what I mean? It was almost like I remember I've been playing Madden since I was a kid. I think it was Madden '92. I think it was maybe '93. Barry Sanders was like a 99 overall, and they had this one play, and it was like flood left, and it was just like Barry would come over the middle, he catch the ball, you hit somebody, you spin off of him, and he was gone. Like it was just certain guys that Michael Vick, and I can't even remember what year it was, where he was just
like
like unstoppable.
'04.
Yeah, he was just like unstoppable. It wasn't even fair. Like, but there's nothing compared to what Bo Jackson was in Tecmo Bowl, and it's crazy because you'll see stuff on YouTube where guys would just kind of like go up and down, up and that was like the cheat code. You go up and down, and dudes would dive, and they just couldn't catch you, and you can just go to the 1 yard line and come all the way back, and it was just it wasn't fair, man. But I just think that added to what we've been talking about, right? Like that lore, that folk hero thing. It's just like even if you didn't watch football, because for me, like I'll say this with video, I love video games. I still play video games. I don't give a shit. Like, and
Yeah,
this happened with me with hockey, with like the NHL, and like those early NHL, like '92, '93. I didn't watch hockey. I was a Puerto Rican in North Philly. Who the hell? I'm not watching no hockey, and but I knew all the guys because of the video game. You know what I mean? So when I did start watching, I was like, oh yeah, I know he's good. He's like a 97 overall. Like
yeah, yeah.
I knew who Jeremy Roenick was because he was great in Chicago. So it's like if you didn't watch sports, you knew who these guys were. You knew who Bo Jackson was because how good he was in the video game. So that only added to like that Raider fandom. Because again, if you got the Raiders, you played with them on Tecmo, you were going to probably become a Raiders fan in real life and watching those guys play. So I just think that added to like his popularity, big time for sure.
For sure. And I have a story for you and
Uh
for our
oh.
listeners. Is I'm take you back to about '06. So YouTube is a newer thing. It's getting a little buzz, but it's not what it is now, right?
I've heard this story, but go ahead. I've heard this.
Yeah.
You told me.
So a friend of mine, we're in the same class. Name is I'll say it, Ross Bozar. He, would like to play. Ross was a genius. Ross is a genius. Ross got a perfect. I'm gonna embarrass him if he listens, but he got a perfect on the math portion of his SAT. Went to UPenn,
Nice.
engineered, smart dude. He's out on the West Coast now. Um, Ross would be on the bus talking about like how he's playing Tecmo Bowl and he found it and he's playing it, and we all love to play Madden. So I was like, "No, I know Tecmo Bowl," and he's like, "Bo Jackson's crazy in that." Yeah, but I'm like, we're on. That's in the past, man. And it's funny, I
Yeah.
love history, but I'm like, we're talking about Madden. Like, I'm trying to get good for this year's Madden and stuff. So he comes in and he tells a few of us that he like, "Bo, no, it was so much fun. You guys got to come over," and we would come over. But he said he did this video where he's with Bo Jackson and he runs around for a few minutes, going up and down, up and down, up and down, up. And we were like, "Oh, that's okay." And then he played it for us. And we were like, "Oh, you really did do this." And then he posted on YouTube. And if you put in Bo Jackson Tecmo Bowl, the first video you'll see is under like number 20. That was his number for basketball, the basketball team. June 12th, 2006. That's my friend Ross. That's gotten millions of
Yeah.
views. But only that brought back so much stuff for Bo Jackson and Tecmo Bowl. So that was a forgotten thing.
Yeah.
Him doing that and posting it and it going viral, which it did, we've gotten sneakers deals from it. Bo did a commercial from it. All these things, it's been on ESPN, it's been on Family Guy and Fox, it's been on so many things, which is crazy. It's the closest I've ever come to like a viral thing. Is like I remember seeing him do it and post it, but it's just funny like this Bo Jackson Tecmo Bowl talk that got reinvigorated like from '06 to now was a part of my friend Ross doing that video and putting it on this thing called YouTube and it going viral. We didn't know what viral was back then.
Yeah, there was no
But
viral.
it was no viral. But Ross did that, and yeah, it changed everything. I sometimes I'm like, yo, man, we don't talk as much as we used to, but for a while, I was like, you should sue or get something because I'm like, people are using your clip and all these different things. Like, shouldn't you get something from it? But
Yeah,
it was very cool to see. But I just wanted to throw that out there is that you go on Bo Jackson Tecmo Bowl, my friend Ross, he did that video, and that kind of reinvigorated because now you can go on and so many clips people talking about Bo's the best at Tecmo Bowl. In the mid 2000s, that was a forgotten thing, but it kind of got brought back, which is pretty cool.
yeah, and you see T-shirts now, like a lot of Tecmo Bowl T-shirts, and like the helmets, like the all like how they do with the digital helmets and stuff like that. Like you see a lot of that now, and a lot of those retro games are coming back. People are playing them big time. So because the Madden that thing's that's a big market, and a lot of guys are doing that and making a lot of money doing that, and but Tecmo Bowl for me was like the first real. I mean, I played Madden from the very beginning, but Tecmo Bowl was the fun one. You know what I mean? Like Tecmo Bowl was a lot of fun. We used to sit down, and me and my friends would like do a season together, and it'll be like 10 of us, 12 of us. I remember I had a friend of mine, an older guy. He would play with the Houston Oilers, and they were really good at that time. They had to run and shoot, and he would just throw the ball all over the place, and it was just so much fun, man. Like sitting there and playing that Tecmo Bowl game, and Super Tecmo Bowl was good too. And it was just this was back in the day, man. It was just fun playing those games. But there's no doubt the best player in that video game was Bo Jackson, hands down.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Jose, we're getting to the pinnacle. The thing I wanted to ask you, which is a lot of people have said it. I mean, I think Dick Shapp, who wrote Bo Knows Bo, he was the first one I had heard say it when the documentary about Dick Shapp came out, like in 2001. That he remember when they had the Sports Century Greatest Athlete and people could vote on it. He said his vote went toward Bo Jackson as the number one athlete of all time. He was the first one I ever heard call Bo the greatest athlete. And now you've heard it more through different things and different talks. So is it Bo? Is it Dion? But do you think Bo Jackson is the greatest athlete of all time? A. And then B, second question, what is for you, what defines a great athlete?
Ooh, that's a good one. I like that second one. I think I'll start with the second one. I think a great athlete, and I kind of like hinted towards this. We both did during part one of this series, the Bo Jackson series, where it's like I think athleticism is a big part of it, obviously, right? But I think the mental aspect of the game has to be included for me. And there's there's not a lot because the reason I say that there's not a lot of people that had the two, and you can look at. I know a lot of basketball players are amazing athletes. Like I think a young Shaq was an all-time great athlete. Like he was the first big. I remember 7-footer that was pushing points sometimes and going down the court, and he was an amazing, amazing athlete. You can look at LeBron as like that type of athleticism and that body, and he's a crazy unicorn type of athlete. I know, like for me, like a John Elway, great baseball player, great football player, obviously one of my top 5 quarterbacks of all time. But I just think like some of those guys, even some of those guys I just mentioned, don't have both. You know what I'm saying? Like I think Shaq had the size, athleticism, the like that killer mentality. I think he had that. But the other two guys, I don't know. That's up for debate for sure. So for me, it's like one, they make the game look easy. You know what I'm saying? Like you're watching them on TV, and it's just like it's like the famous quote that you always hear announcers say, it's like a walk in the park for them, right? Like it's just like, I'm here, I'm going to hit 3 home runs, and it's nothing. You know what I'm saying? I'm not even sweating. You know what I mean? Like I think that for me, if they make the game look easy, I think that's greatness to me. I think like, can I put this guy in an NBA court? You know what I'm saying? Like, can I put this guy on an NFL field? And if I feel as though like, yeah, I can, I think their skill transitions to like all sports or most sports. I think to me that's a great athlete, right? And the thing is, like, I forget when I do that, I forget about track and field, and a lot of these guys are great track runners and things like that. So, those for me are like some of the criteria. It's like it's going to be hard for me to remember everything. I think about it that way, but I want to say also, I can't. I think like the mental toughness of like sports and the ability to kind of like have like almost like a killer mentality, right? Like we hear Kobe and the Mamba mentality, all that stuff. I think it's super important for me to consider you a great athlete or an all-time great athlete. You got to have that too, and I think that's for me that allows me to separate a lot of them too, like a lot of these great, famous all-time great superstars. So I guess that's sort of my like put together definition. And what was the first question? I already forgot the first
Is
question.
Bo Jackson the
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
greatest? Is he the greatest athlete?
Well, if I use my criteria, I'm going to say no, right? Like that's obvious. Athleticism, like physically, I would say yes. You know what I'm saying? I've never seen somebody play two sports, two pro sports, and be good at both pro sports. You know what I'm saying? Like I've seen Deion Sanders play, and Deion was like a nice baseball player. He could steal some bases and he can make a couple diving catches, but I don't know if Deion is going to be a possible, like as they say. I haven't heard a baseball player say Deion could have been like a Hall of Famer in baseball. I haven't. Maybe I just haven't heard it, but I never heard that. And I know we kind of like broke that down in our first episode, but I've heard Hall of Fame players say that about Will Jackson. So I think like the athleticism part, I think he has to be up there. For me, I'm not putting him at number one, but he's definitely in my top three, five, whatever we want to go with. What about you, Deremy? I need you to answer both those questions as well, please.
Um, I'll do like you then for the latter. What I go back and forth with is it's athletic ability. So, like you said, is can you just they can put you on track and field, put you on a baseball diamond, a basketball court, a football field, different sports, and you just show like, wow, he's got that raw ability, or she's got that raw ability. That's important. That's athleticism. But what I go back and forth on is like we did Wayne Gretzky, and everyone called him the greatest player. No one would say he's the greatest athlete to put on some hockey skates, right?
Right.
But he's the greatest player. So a lot of times when you say player, we mentioned Marcus Allen. That's productivity in that sport. Now there has to be, and I struggle with that because a lot of times it's just athletic ability. Is just wow, like are you physical and what you put that raw ability, but there has to be productivity for me involved in this answer and what you did. And for that right there is why Bo's not number one. And why, if you want to say, if the question is more most talented athlete, Bo can be in my top three, top two, maybe even. But the greatest athlete, I mean, and this is a great compliment. I hope it doesn't sound bad, but I mean, he's like a top 10 guy, but he's not in my top five
Mm,
because of the productivity of it.
right.
And so I can't put him over Wilt Chamberlain,
Oh yeah, no. Hell
who
no.
what Wilt did on the basketball court. Everyone, a lot of people, if you don't know, you know, but what Wilt did in track and field.
Yes.
And Wilt was a freak of nature. And at Kansas, he triple jumped more than 50 feet, shot put it more than 56 feet. He ran a 100-yard dash in 10.9 seconds. He won the high jump of the Big Eight Conference 3 years in a row. I mean, he would have been a dominant track and field star if Wilt wanted to do that. A great volleyball player. Wilt, a great power lifter. could have done all those things too. I look at somebody like Jim Brown, they call the greatest lacrosse player ever,
Yep.
and arguably the greatest football player ever. So Bo is definitely not over Jim Brown as a running back, but to me, in the greatest athlete list, he's behind Jim Brown as well.
I
There's
agree.
some people who get overlooked. Bullet Bob Hayes, for me, is one of those people that, when it comes to great athletes, I don't think people ever talk about what he did and how amazing he was. And he's a Hall of Fame Olympian, a Hall of Fame football player, but he won the gold medals at the 1964 Olympics. One time considered the world's fastest human by virtue of having multiple world records in the 60-yard, 100-yard, 220, and Olympic 100-meter dashes. So that's just insane right there. So he won gold in 64 in Tokyo at the 100 meters. So has all those things. But then also, he played football last, was in high school. He wins the Olympics. The Cowboys try him out. So no offense to Bo, but Bo did play baseball and football in college.
Right.
Bob Hayes doesn't play football in college. He just goes after winning the Olympics, gets a tryout, and becomes a Hall of Fame receiver. And not only does he do that, he winds up being someone who changed the way the game is played by forcing NFLs to develop a zone defense and forcing a lot of DBs to do bump and run coverage. So he's a Hall of Famer in both those sports, and no one really talks about him as an all-time great athlete.
Mic drop. No, I love that one. I love Bullet Bob Hayes. Like I love that you brought that up. I agree. I don't think I got Wilt again. Like I got Wilt up there. I got Jim Brown up there as well. I don't think he's definitely nowhere near those guys. I got Herschel Walker up there. Like for me, you brought up Herschel earlier, and again, I totally flaked on Herschel Walker when I prepared for this podcast, and I just think what he did on the track field as well. Like he was great on the track field. He wasn't Bullet Bob Hayes great, but he was great, and what he did on the football field, especially in college and early on in his NFL career, he was an amazing football player as well. So I just think there's a lot of guys who do, like you said. I'm glad you said it the way you did. Like some guys that do get forgotten about because again, like some of their accolades are not like it's not pro sports. You know what I'm saying? Like, and again, it's like a track and field maybe or something else. And that's also, I mean, listen, I run every day. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
and I look at what these guys, the numbers these guys do, man, and it's just like it's mind blowing, man. Like it's so amazing, man. And what like, and I when growing up, I wasn't like a big track fan. I mean, I would watch the Olympics and things like that, but I love track now. Like I watch that a lot, and I marvel at some of the stuff they can do. So no, I'm glad you brought up a couple of those names because yeah, they're all time great athletes for sure.
I also have I have a couple for you because I think that's the key. Bo, obviously, and Dion get popularity because there's four major North American sports and they played two of the four. And they get a lot of credit, but I think track and field is not as popular in America, except for every 4 years if you have somebody in the Olympics. But that should get love. Wrestling should get love. Amateur
Right.
wrestling, that should give love too. And I'm looking at a guy, he passed away in 2020. I'm looking at Carlton Hasselrig, who was an amateur wrestler at University of Pittsburgh at Johnstown, and he won 6 NCAA wrestling titles as a heavyweight. So he won 3 in Division Two, and then back then, when you were in Division Two, if you won, you could go up and compete in the Division One NCAAs. So for 3 years, he wins Division Two, and then all those 3 years he goes to Division One, and he wins championships at Division One as well. So he has 6 NCAA heavyweight titles. Right now, people probably listening, Jose, they're like, Pittsburgh at Johnstown. Did they have a football team? Good question. Hell no, it didn't. But guess what this guy does? Walks on to the Pittsburgh Steelers and becomes a Pro Bowl offensive lineman. So the last time he played football was in high school, was an amateur wrestler, 6 national titles. And I know amateur is not pro, but still the degree of difficulty in going from, hey, you're not playing football in college. Last time you played was in high school. So then you walk on to the Steelers and you're a Pro Bowl offensive lineman for that team. And he also later in life competed in MMA as well. So Carlton Hassel, there's just people who don't get the love because amateur wrestling is popular in certain pockets of the country. It's not
Yeah.
overall nationally popular, but amateur, that's hard. Carlton Hassel probably could have been an Olympic wrestler if he chose. He chose to go on and walk on to the Steelers and become an offensive lineman and become a Pro Bowler for them.
Right.
So
I just think competing from Division 2 to Division 1, it's extremely difficult because, I mean, as we all know, listening and us two on this podcast, it's like the difference in athlete from Division 2 to Division 1. It's night and day. You know what I'm saying? Like, and for him to go do that in 3 seasons in a row, you know what I'm saying? Like, and to prove his worth from Division 2 to go to Division 1 and win titles there, that's big time for sure.
and then that right there alone is great. But then I'm
Right.
going to go walk on to the Steelers as an offensive lineman, and not only do I make the team, not only do I start, I'm a Pro Bowler.
Yeah. So I'm
Like
one of the
that,
best. I'm one of the best
yeah.
in the league. Yeah.
So that I think, and Carlton Hasselrig wound up having some issues, off the field, and then he kind of got it back, and then he, wound up having some CTE stuff, and he sadly passed away in 2020. And I don't think he got the credit he deserved in the amateur wrestling community, but also overall, as talk about a great athlete. Like to me, that's one of the most amazing. Like you said, D1 to D2 to do it one time
Right.
is amazing. But 3 years in a row, I'm dominating both. I'm getting 6 national titles, and to do that, so I want to give props to him because I think, and not to denigrate what Bo did at
Right.
all, like,
Right.
but there's something then when you look at a Bob Hayes or a Hasselrig, when you don't play that sport at all those 4 years or however many years in college, and then you just go walk on the highest level and you're great. And in Bob Hayes' case, you're great and you change how the game is played. You changed track and field, you changed pro football. And how many? I was talking to my dad about this. How many guys we've seen it from John Carlos, and even in different sports where you'd bring a track and field guy on. I remember like the A's were like, we're going to have a guy just steal bases and didn't really last, or
Right.
this guy's going to come on and be this great receiver, didn't last. Bob Hayes did the transition, so
Yeah, which is a tough transition, right? Like I know
mm-hmm.
Willie Galt was another one who was like a great track guy and became a really good wide receiver in the NFL. He wasn't Bob Hayes, but he was really good, and so it can be done for sure, but it's a tough one, and a lot of people have tried it. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of teams have seen successes of like Bob Hayes and Willie Galt and a lot of other guys in the NFL, and try to do it and bring in guys, and it just doesn't happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so again, like to do it at a high level, and then force the league to kind of like shift the way it does things defensively. It's an amazing thing. Even if he just did the NFL thing, and you take away the track stuff, that's still all time great. So, but like Deremy mentioned, like we're not putting these names out there to kind of diminish what guys like Bo Jackson did specifically. Like what he did was incredible. You know what I'm saying? Like what he was doing in baseball, what he was doing in football at the same time was incredible. You know what I mean? So is he an all-time great athlete? Yes, absolutely. But again, like let's not just put him up there because it was just sports that we seen play. You know what I'm saying? Like it's there's
Mm-hmm.
other guys who did some tremendous things, and we just wanted to make sure we shouted them out.
And to be fair, like I said, I wouldn't call him the greatest, but maybe most talented because I guarantee for all the athletes you've named and I've named, they love or really passionate about at least one of those sports.
Right.
Bo didn't like either of them. Like baseball was a fun hang, football was whatever. So as far as just a talent athlete, he might be my number one most talented because he just did it. He didn't really like him like that, which is really what's mind boggling. And I just say that so it might sound, I hope it doesn't, but like in these 2 episodes, we were kind of like knocking Bo. I just think what we love doing here, it's fair to reevaluate and really look at the proof, because I think so many times narratives get spun. We have these highlights, we forget things, and it's like, well, let's remember what really happened and let's really
Right.
evaluate why it was. There's a good reason why it was such a shooting star, that pro career for both sports of Bo Jackson.
Exactly. And again, like I don't even think we were like bashing him or anything. We just keeping it real, like and like the young kids say, right? And because again, here at Bigger Than the Game with Deremy and Jose, it's like it's way more than what they did on the field. It's the dedication and it's just everything that we look at, and we wanted to make sure it would have been super easy for us, Deremy, to come on here and just be like, oh, he was a Pro Bowler, he was an All Star, MLB, the greatest athlete of all time, Bo Jackson, Bo Jackson, Bo Jackson, and it's just like, well, we're not here to do that, right? Like, I'm saying that's what makes our show different. That's why you're listening to this show. If you're new to the show, welcome, but that's what we do here. You know what I'm saying? Like, and we take a dive and we use the angle that we wanted to use, and what we put folks in the blender on this podcast, and it's just not to like, we're not going to sugarcoat it. We're just going to let our listeners know from our perspectives. And if you disagree, we're more than happy to have that conversation with you. But that's what we wanted to do with Bo Jackson. We specifically wanted to split it up because we wanted to take a deep dive into his baseball career and football career, and not only just kind of like just give you the highlights, but let's just talk about like what really was the player. And like Bo knows, yes, but what Bo could have known if it would have he would have been like more into like becoming great at what specific sport, man. We would have had a totally different conversation during these two episodes if that was the case. But since this wasn't, we have to say that too, though.
Absolutely. And when we release this episode, we'll, if you want to start, tweet at us at Bigger Game Pod. You can follow us on Instagram at Bigger Game Pod as well. But we'll be kind of putting out there, and Jose, we got to remind each other to kind of put some polls and stuff
Absolutely.
about who you think is the greatest athlete. I feel like a lot of the Twitterverse will say Bo Jackson, but I hope they listen to these two episodes to really, see why. I'm not. Hey, your opinion is not. It's not a crazy opinion at all. Jeff Broman spent how many years writing this book, and he was on another former guest of ours, Jim Mylock, his podcast, and saying Bo's the greatest athlete ever. And part of me was looking at my phone, listening to the podcast, going, "But you're missing. Like you wrote about it,
right,
very detailed, and you're missing the big parts of why you can't call him the greatest, in my opinion." But Jeff Perlman's entitled to his opinion, but I want to hear the people's opinion. I know you do too as well, Jose, on what defines an athlete, and is Bo, in their opinion, the greatest? And if he's not, who do they think is?
Right. It's always a good debate. You know what I'm saying? Because again, like people from different type of like sports fans will say, NBA players are the greatest athletes, right? Like, you'll hear track fans talk about how track stars are the greatest athletes. Like it's just always a good conversation to have. And again, there's no right or wrong answers. It's just from your perspective, right? But again, like, yes, we are fans of Bo Jackson, 100%. You know what I'm saying? Like, he definitely like changed the way we look at athletes and what sports can do for individuals, and how like you can just go from up here one day to like down here the next day. And it's definitely like a somewhat like a tragedy, right? Like what happened with his career. But again, we wanted to highlight that's all true, but there was another level of what could have been and what didn't happen. You know what I'm saying? And we wanted to highlight that. And I think we did. Hopefully, we did a good job there. Again, that we'll let the listeners let us know that. But this was a lot of fun, man. Like when we talked about this, doing the 2-parter, man. I just could not wait, and I'm just really interested to hear what other people got to say about this.
Absolutely. So please hit us up at Bigger Game Pod on Twitter, Instagram. Just what you think about these episodes, any past episodes, and any future episodes you want to hear us talk about. We love to hear from the people. But for the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jose Ruiz, I'm Deremy Dove. Thank you guys for listening to Bigger Than the Game with Deremy and Jose.
Peace.